Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Jonathan Rowe, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of nCino. Hi, Jonathan. How are you doing?
Hey, Adrian. Doing great. Thrilled to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Jonathan, for the benefit of our listeners and our readers and things, can you give us a bit of, can you introduce yourself first and foremost and tell us a bit about yourself and also about the work that you do across at nCino?
Happy to. I started the first half of my career in spending a lot of time getting degrees, as some folks do. You spend a lot of time in school, and ultimately ended up as a professor and director of the Entrepreneurship Center at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, where I was researching banking and technology, and had the great pleasure of meeting what is a gentleman by the name of Chip Mahan, who's well known in the States, actually started one of the first internet banks. And he happened to be speaking in my class and was talking about this new startup that they're going to start in Wilmington, North Carolina in the States that had this transformative software that was really going to allow banks to, really innovate and serve their customers better and be more efficient. And long story short is after class, him and I were chatting, and one thing surprisingly led to another, and I stepped away from academia to join a little startup by the name of nCino when there was about 8 employees back in early 2012, and we are now almost 600 employees, 200 customers plus, and in 4 countries 6.5 years later. So it's been an exciting ride.
Perfect. So I also kind of know that, or rather notice, I mean, this will give listeners a bit of context in terms of nCino and things, that you are part of the Forbes Cloud 100. In fact, you're number 24, if I'm right, on the Forbes Cloud 100, which sort of tells you, which sort of ranks the fastest growing and best performing sort of cloud-based kind of companies. I think broadly across the States, but it also reaches further than that as well. If I'm not wrong. Yeah,
no, you're spot on. It's a global sort of both recognition and evaluation. So yeah, we were very proud to be recognized there and be one of the top, in this case, 24 cloud companies in the world.
Well, fantastic. I mean, chapeau for that. And I guess that sort of it kind of indicates that you're, despite all the growth and adding all of the employees, it actually, I guess it tells you that you're also getting the broader industry recognition that you obviously deserved. But I'm not here to flatter you, Jonathan. This is kind of this is not the thing. I'm just going to stop there now. But what I wanted to say is that actually, because I also know that you yourself and the folks down at nCino, because you're based in Wilmington, North Carolina. Now you've just gone through this massive Hurricane Florence a few weeks ago, and this is sort of part of the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I wanted to sort of understand. We talked before this call, when just in the setup of this interview, and I wanted to explore this idea of what happens in terms of service and employees and culture and continuity and all these sort of things when you face one of these sort of big, if you like, natural disasters. Now, whether it's a flash flood or a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever, which these things seem to be happening at an increasing sort of frequency. So perhaps you could tell us kind of what happened in Wilmington or in around Wilmington with the Hurricane Florence, and what happened to the firm and how you dealt with that, and just to give us a bit of a picture that we can start to kind of play out in our minds.
Yeah, and I think maybe the great way to kind of frame it a little bit is I think I actually ironically recently got married, and I remember a lot of the toasts that were given, they always talk about it's not only the good times, but it's really the challenging and tough times that set the tone for a strong relationship. And I think nCino's both culture and people and our ecosystem of customers and partners, it was really the Hurricane Florence, which hit, as you said, a few weeks ago, came ashore right in Wilmington, North Carolina. To me, that was one of the greatest tests and proudest moments I've ever had, both professionally and at nCino.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was how the company responded and handled it, because when a situation like that happens, and you have a storm that's life-threatening, you first and foremost want all employees, and I think it's generally assumed at nCino, but I think it's always nice to hear as an employee that first and foremost your safety and the safety of your family and animals, which are beloved by many, are first and foremost. And I think as soon as you make that clear that individuals and employees don't have to stress between work and keeping their family safe, you free up a little bit of mind share to focus on one, making sure your family gets evacuated into a safe place. But you also allow folks to think about balance that with work as they can. And I think, the great thing with that situation is one, letting people know safety first and foremost, but secondly, to have a pretty significant plan in place so that whether once people got to safety, we're not only do we sell the leading cloud-based banking platform, but we also are a cloud-based company in terms of how we operate. So whether you're evacuating from Wilmington, you're going to South Carolina or to New York or farther west or maybe even to Europe, you can literally connect to the internet and continue working. So I think that gives us the flexibility. And then, the second part was having a plan in place and, having a business continuity plan, having a team of individuals that we knew as soon as this happened, it wasn't a question of like who goes where, who does what. The people who were actively going to operate the company during the disaster were the first ones to leave, and we have operations centers strategically set up throughout the states. And those groups evacuated and were able to continue the operation. So I'm trying to give a little bit of a framework, but it was both a very terrifying experience, I think, for all of us. But at the same time, I think we were well prepared, and it really showcased the culture of this company in terms of how we responded.
So if I may, given that, so I'm based in the UK, and whilst we get storms and things, we don't get hurricanes, or very seldom get hurricanes or anything like that. But it's quite a familiar thing, particularly on the southeastern sort of seaboard of the US, and because you're so close to the kind of Caribbean as well. And that's very much kind of hurricane, tropical storm sort of areas. Can you explain to us kind of when you talk about this hurricane landing in Wilmington, what does that actually mean for, I guess rainfall or flooding or damage or kind of whatever, just so we can get a better understanding of kind of what, and how did that impact the business in terms of the business infrastructure, so we can get a better understanding of kind of what we're dealing with kind of too, because otherwise the thing I'll equate it to is like, we'll get lots of snow or something, and then everything gets kind of snowbound, and then we've got to figure out kind of what to do. But a hurricane in terms of the ones that you've just experienced is like on a whole different level in terms of destruction and disruption and things. So can you kind of give us an understanding on what you went through, because it's like it's foreign to me in terms of an experience.
Yeah, and for any of the listeners who have been through a hurricane and other disasters, it probably sound eerily familiar, and it's a great question. I think there's kind of three things that you fear, and for those who have literally been through a hurricane, didn't evacuate or have the either misfortune or fortune of being through three hurricanes here in Wilmington, North Carolina. This was the first one I ever evacuated for. But, living on the coast here, first of all, it's the wind, basically how quickly the wind is blowing. There's the high risk of windows in your house blowing out.
Right.
And then, the wind literally lifting your roof or your entire house off the ground. I mean, that, obviously is in and of itself a very scary thought. And so you've got the wind, then you've got the rain.
Yeah.
And the rain coupled with the wind comes, sometimes we're used to rain coming down vertically from the sky. Generally in hurricanes, it comes horizontally with the wind. And so if you do experience damage to your house, I mean, if something as simple as a window, I mean, I can't tell you of sad stories, of people we work with and people in our community who maybe only had a little bit of minor damage on the roof or minor damage to a window. Yet the interesting thing with this storm, it was just nonstop rain for days. And
right.
If water can get in your house, even a small amount, but it's coming in at, literally inches and meters every few hours, it's going to flood your house and ruin the inside. And so that's kind of the second thing is, this rain just pounding your house. And if the wind has caused any access for the water to get in. And then the third part is, our wonderful oceans and waterways that, on a beautiful day like today in Wilmington, we get to enjoy, but on a day with a hurricane, that water's rising and it often comes over the shore and, add to that all the rain that's on top of it. And so you get massive flooding.
Right.
So not only are you worried about, your roof or windows blowing out from the wind and then rain getting into your house and flooding it, but you're worried about water coming up from the ground, from the oceans and literally, reaching in some cases the top of houses. So those are all, very serious. And unfortunately, all three of those happened in this case. Well, I was going to say to your second part of the question around the operations. Well, why don't you go ahead and I'll come back to the operation piece because you say that and I imagine to a listener you're thinking, goodness, how does a business continue operating with all of those things, with that happening, at a point in time?
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's what I was going to go dig into, and I was a bit like going, so you've got this wind, so that's it's going to threaten to destroy things, but also getting the wind and the rain and the flooding, and that's going to disrupt operations and infrastructure and people getting back and forward and then and so on and so forth. I mean, how did you? I know you talked about a business continuity plan, but I mean, how did you deal with that, and how does that all fit together with the whole? Because businesses operate as part of an ecosystem, in of themselves, but also how they plug into the local community and then how they continue to serve their customers. So, I mean, can you tell us about how do you keep the show on the road, as it were, and how do you help everybody else get back on their feet because you are part of this ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I probably can spend an hour, so you'll have to stop me at the right points because there's so many parts to that. Because I think the other aspect to a storm like this is it's not only just the experience of in this case, 2 or 3 days of just the pounding storm, but it's once the storm passes, it's the aftermath. And on my way into work today, you still see piles of debris on the side of the road, and houses getting gutted and houses that used to be there that aren't there anymore. And so it's also the aftermath of the storm that takes a while. And I think that was the other part for nCino from an operational standpoint. It wasn't just surviving those 2 or 3 days. It was the fact that most of the area was flooded. There was no power, and folks who stayed in the Wilmington area, if you don't have power, and it's difficult to get around, there's down trees, you just have an issue there. And then for folks who had evacuated, they couldn't get back to Wilmington because all the routes here were all flooded. And so it was overall, there's still obviously people dealing with the situation with houses and whatnot, but just it was about 10 to 12 days where we had to operate this company in a very different way. And I think the things that allowed us to do that successfully, I think it starts, it may be a bit of a cliche, but it's our culture. We very much preach a culture of empowerment. And so, we don't want to have a company, yes, we want to have a plan in place, but we don't want to have a company where people feel like they have to follow every rule, even if the rule may not make logical sense. And a great example I think of is, I mentioned we've got a core team of about 30 people. That includes customer support, that includes programmers, that includes, communications experts. That team knows days before the storm hits that they're going to pick up and go again to some of our safe places we've identified to serve our customers and make sure all the operations can continue. And the fact that we're cloud-based literally means we can log in wherever, right?
Sure.
And access the information we need to do that. But what I think is unique about nCino is we already know that when those people evacuate in advance to run the company, that they're going to take their families. We've got pet-friendly hotels, little things that a lot of companies or people may not think of. Not every hotel is pet-friendly. And, if you've got pets and you're evacuating with your family, you're taking your pets. They're part of the family. And so that's just all there. And they can do the right thing to serve the customer. And then secondly, it's also, the fact I mentioned the cloud-based, but also for employees. I would say 90% of the company or employees that are based in Wilmington, North Carolina, evacuated. And, they went to family and hotels and friends, et cetera. And, if you've ever sat in a place for days on end and, I don't want to say you get bored, but you look for things to do and you look for distractions because it's, you can only watch the news and see all the images so many times. And so I think people found a lot of comfort and solace in interacting with their colleagues at work and, continuing to work. And so I think, that empowerment we have in our company. And then, a couple other quick stories I'll share is for folks who stayed in Wilmington, and rode out the storm. A lot of them had significant damage. Our office is located in a safe area. It's built very strongly. So our office made it through the storm without any issue. It lost power and we had generators, but we had employees who were in Wilmington come, both seek shelter and were able to come to our offices for shower, for snacks. And again, they were here and did some work to help out. But just the fact that nobody has to think to themselves, goodness, would our company approve me going to the office if I bring my kids to the office or my dog because it's safety from where I live during a storm or right after the aftermath? Is that going to be approved or not? It's just you do that because that's the nCino way. And I think, the fact that our culture, our operations plan was in place, and then people do the right thing. And because of that, you kind of blur the line between personal life and work life. It becomes one. And I think when you do that for people and you remove as much stress as you can, they are able to balance both. I think people can do extraordinary things when they're empowered.
So let me ask you about that, because you talk about the nCino way and you talk about culture, your culture. Because the thing I think there's a lot of people that talk about culture, but actually when you're in the middle of a storm, a hurricane, talk is definitely going to be cheap, and that's where the real behaviors and real values and real people sort of show up and help, as it were. And so I guess my question would be, how do you build that? Does that come about by accident, or have you practiced it, or how do you bring that to life? Because you talk about this, as I say, the nCino way. What is the way, and how do you bring that about? Because I guess that's the elusive thing for many people. Because I guess it's the point about all of this is that if you want to create a really robust and really strong company that is flexible, adaptable, and is willing to do its utmost to help both its employees and its customers. How do you build that glue? How do you develop it?
It's a great question. I think it's so important. And you do an amazing job, right, of sharing these stories and research and advising on culture. And I think it starts with having simple core values that aren't just words that you put on a wall or on your website. It's about truly representing the soul of your company. And I think we've kind of got 6 values. And I think one of the ones that always stands out to me is do the right thing. Right. I think when you start by telling people, hey, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. I'm going to tell you to do what you think is the right thing. And we're not going to have layers of bureaucracy or approvals. It's not to say that, we don't have structure in place, because you need some structure to be successful and grow at the pace we have.
Sure.
But I think when you give people, again, the freedom and tell them, hey, do the right thing, they're going to do the right thing 99 out of 100 times. And that one time they maybe don't, they're trying to do the right thing. And, we'll learn from that. And so I think that do the right thing and also that collaborative nature of our company, again, the hurricane is such, it was a difficult, and it's obviously impacted so many people, but for us, it was truly a great test of a great culture and company. And it's why I'm so proud to share it with you and the listeners, is that, we had people who were in Wilmington, we had employees who, like, when their house was getting literally flooded and ruined, we had other employees who went out in the storm to rescue those employees and bring them back to their house. Right. We had, right after the storm, we had people who were displaced outside of Wilmington, we had other employees who said, hey, my family has an extra bedroom, or my friend has an extra room, come stay with us. And so you saw this community of employees that not only does the right thing, but really is built around teamwork and collaboration. And, I think those things really, to me, stand out. And it's not, like you said, it's not something that you just do one day. We have our saying, which is make somebody's day. Mm-hmm. And, those are things, make somebody's day, particularly on difficult days and when you have a hurricane. And also, it's all about attitude. We have a saying at nCino, which is we hire for attitude and train for skill. Again, we have great, talented people at nCino, but we always look for the right attitude. And I think when you have folks with the right attitude, so even during the storm, during these tough situations, we're all trying to help each other and continue running the company and dealing with everything. Folks remain positive. And I think, when you're in a company where everyone's positive and says, hey, we're going to figure this out together, we're going to respect each other. That's another one of our values. And so, again, I'm giving the sort of some of these values in the ecosystem. So, doing the right thing, making somebody's day, respecting each other, 3 of our core values. And that doesn't only translate amongst employees, that translates to our customers and our partners. I mean, that's how we operate our business. And I think, maybe taking one other step is, seeing the outpouring of support we've gotten from customers and partners, both during and after the storm, to me kind of showcase that our culture and what we've built is not just within the walls of nCino and our employees, it's within our broader ecosystem that includes our customers and our partners.
Right. I mean, because the thing that I find, Jonathan, is that I actually think we can find clues to how great or not our experience is when we think about the edges, i.e. when something sort of extreme happens, like a hurricane or like a major outage or whatever. And I know that people have business continuity plans in place to prepare for that. But then there's sometimes those business continuity plans, they're very much, process and systems and sort of technology kind of driven. And some of the stuff that you're talking about is very much almost like the soft tissue stuff, people showing up for each other, whether it's customers and or fellow employees. And then how you bring all those kind of values to life in those kind of extreme situations. I mean, do you practice for that? Or how do you envisage these scenarios and then practice kind of what you would do? Because it makes me think about, it's all very well for somebody to talk about, it's a bit like a sporting thing. It's all very well to talk about, this is how we want to play the game. But until you kind of actually go and train, then you only then do you actually figure out whether or not you're going to be able to execute on the talk, as it were.
That's so right, Adrian. I think, at first it starts exactly what you said. First, you need to have a basic framework of a plan, and you have to have and I say a framework because you can't, to your point, you can't plan for every contingency. I mean, we envisioned a possibility of a hurricane, but we never envisioned the idea that people wouldn't actually be able to get back, right, to Wilmington, North Carolina. We never envisioned that every road would be flooded, and that this would be a 10, 12-day process. So you have to have, your business continuity plan needs to have enough structure, but not so much that if there is, an outlier or something on the edge, as you said, happens, that nobody can react because they're frozen. So I think that's first and foremost. And then secondly, it's exactly as you said, it's practicing. We have an incredible team of people here, executives, et cetera, that have made this a part of our culture, and it's one of those things where, sometimes people and companies kind of say, oh, great, here we go, whether it's a fire drill or a hurricane drill or an earthquake drill or, whatever, or even, something extreme like a terrorism situation is, we take those practice situations seriously. And, we do about twice a year, do these sort of disaster tests where, we sort of create an imagined hurricane and everyone has to work from home. And I think what's one of the things that really stands out to me, and because, one is just practicing it, but two is our team that sort of facilitates the practice and runs our business continuity efforts throws curveballs into the mix. So, for example, we had a practice session about a year ago for a disaster, and my role at nCino in marketing, obviously communications is a big part. You want to continually keep your customers and your partners, we're a very transparent company, updated about what's happening because, again, customers we loved the outpouring of support and love we got from them, but we also wanted to make sure they knew exactly what was happening because, they still need to run their businesses using our software. And so I remember we were doing the practice and, I was dialing into the call to get all the updates and help out. And if you've ever had that painful experience where you're putting in the meeting code, to join a call and it's not working and you get this, like, that's the wrong meeting code. And so I'm getting this error continuously and I'm getting really frustrated. I'm like, well, why did our CIO give me the wrong dial-in information? So I texted him and he came back to me and he said, I did give you the wrong information because I want everyone I want to see what would happen if you were unable to dial in, whether, you didn't have power or you lost your phone or something happened. We can't be reliant on you. We've got to see how the team responds. And to me, it was just a small example,
right? But
it's an example of not only practicing, but throwing scenarios out of the unexpected. And so by doing that, and again, I keep coming back to culture because I think that's a critical foundation underlying this. By having a business continuity framework, by practicing it, by throwing sort of unexpected surprises during the practice, and having a culture of transparency, of respect, of doing the right thing, all these things, that will best equip you to deal with the situation that, like I said, we went through, and I think came out even stronger. Actually, our sort of rallying cry, which our customers have picked up, I'm actually looking at a glass in front of us, and we had socks, and our customers have done tremendous things of a heart with the nCino logo in it. It became nCino Strong. nCino Strong was our rallying cry, not only for the company and the community, but for our ecosystem. So kind of the overall sort of answer I'd give you that hopefully, other companies and individuals it's helpful for, because this stuff is, you're right, it's happening more frequently. And the better you can be prepared and also flexible, I think the better you can, as a company, react to it.
Perfect. Now, you also kind of mentioned this outpouring of support from customers. I mean, so how did the hurricane and the disruption, how did that affect your customers and how have they responded? Because you talked about this outpouring of support. I mean, can you tell me a bit more about kind of that as well?
Absolutely. And I think, again, to give a little bit of maybe a plug for cloud-based technology, I think, a lot of things are moving to the cloud. The great thing about the cloud is, again, our customers were not impacted at all. And that in and of itself as a business is a very powerful thing to say, because we're a cloud-based company and because, our software and data doesn't necessarily sit right, next to the ocean, waiting for a hurricane to hit it. So I think it was really great that our customers weren't impacted and we were able to continue to support them. But I think, again, when you've built relationships with your customers, we have a big focus at nCino on reputation and making sure our customers are successful with our software. Because I think any company at the end of the day, you're measured both on your people and on whether the product or the service that your customers buy helps them, makes their life better or makes their bank operate more efficiently, et cetera. And so, I think we've built those relationships with our customer base. And so it was amazing to see. I mean, there's so much stuff, especially now online, where we had customers taking pictures of, as I mentioned, we have socks with the nCino logo on. And I'm going to send you a pair because they've become very hot items. And we had customers posting pictures of socks, of their nCino socks online, wishing us, safety and telling us. We actually had a customer who and I'm actually going to read the quote because I think it's pretty powerful. They wrote that, "We know that the nCino team always goes the extra mile to make sure our needs are taken care of. However, your safety and well-being, along with that of your family, is more important to us. Stay safe." And I think that's just an example of many, many comments that we got, pictures, as I mentioned, of socks and customers just well wishes and safety for us. I mean, to me, it speaks a lot when your customers are literally telling you, even though we're going to continue to support them, but are telling you, put your safety first. And I think for us, that really, again, validated the relationships we built. I mean, in tough times, it's a measure of a relationship. And I think for us, it really showed that our focus on making our customers successful and also being transparent. I mean, we're all humans, we're all people. And again, I think, our customers really showed that they care about not only the software that they've purchased from us, but us as people and our relationships with them. And so, the stocks were fantastic in so many of these quotes. And it was interesting. I mean, we've had a number of employees who were displaced and continued to sort of deal with temporary housing and things. And nCino, we just did this amongst employees. Customers started contributing as well as partners. We raised over $70,000 to support not only employees displaced, but our community as well, because we've had teams of nCino employees who have gone out into the community. I mean, literally the moment the storm passed, to help build up the community and help people in need. And so again, and we didn't have to say, hey, sign up for this, go do X. Employees just did it. They said,
right.
You know what? I'm going to get some stuff done this morning, but then I'm going to go out with my chainsaw. I'm going to go out with a case of water, and I'm going to help my neighbor or my colleague down the street. And so that was the other thing is you just saw an incredible balance of continue to operate the company even after the storm, but also just employees getting up and helping the community and our customers providing support for that as well, through donations, which again is just a very powerful message.
Fantastic. So, I mean, what a great story, Jonathan, and congratulations on getting through it. And I know you're not completely through it, but things are in rebuilding phase, as it were, or coming back to normal. But like we said before, it's like overall we're seeing increasing incidents of violent weather and natural disasters, as well as some other more kind of violent and terrible sort of situations. And heaven forbid that they happen, but we know that the weather and natural disasters kind of seem to be happening more frequently. I mean, what do you think overall we can learn from your experience? Because it's so fresh, as it were.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, even since it's been only a few weeks since Hurricane Florence, I mean, there's been another hurricane that's hit the U.S. I believe remnants of one of the hurricanes actually made it all the way across the Atlantic, and I think impacted Portugal and parts of Europe, and then you have typhoons. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think first and foremost, a company that's not thinking about, or a business that's not thinking about any of this, or even individuals, I think you're going to put yourself in a tough situation, because whatever the disaster may be, it does seem like there are more of them, and being prepared is first and foremost. So I think, one, it starts again with having that framework of a plan. What do you do? How do you continue to operate a business if something happens, and how do you ensure the safety of your employees? I mean, those are for us the two most critical things. Mm-hmm. Then I think, as we talked about, practicing that, practicing the plan, so that again you're not so much thinking about what do I do or frozen. You're able to more react and take action, but also when you're practicing, sort of throw into the mix some new scenarios or uncertainty, because again, you can never put on paper exactly what's going to happen. So when you practice, give some changes and some things that happen unexpectedly. And then I think it's third, really look at your culture. I think it's a lot of the stuff again that you continue to share and talk about, because you can have a great framework for a business continuity plan. You can practice it, but if you don't have a culture where people are going to do the right thing, where they feel empowered to both balance, the family and business, then you're not going to have a great result. And you may you may run into issues that could affect customers, because I think, as much as customers will be forgiving, if it starts impacting their business, it could be an issue. And so I think, ensuring you have that strong cultural foundation beneath all of this. And those are often easier things to say than to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really defining what are the core values of your company, and making sure you live and breathe them, not only amongst your employees and within your business, but also that it also spills out to your customers and your partners. And you are a very transparent business. I think, again, for us, those were really the pieces that allowed us to get through this. And as I said, our rallying cry was nCino strong. And I truly believe we came out stronger as a company as a result. And, I think, again, we're very proud and excited to share the story, because we know other people will probably go through it, and, we may face it again. We're still living on the coast. And like I said, it's a beautiful day today, but there's a high likelihood that we will face similar issues. And having offices in Sydney and London and Toronto, there's everywhere nowadays. I mean, I think these things are front and center. So sure. That's just a little bit, I think, of what we experienced, what we learned, and how we successfully navigated this as a company.
Thank you for that. I think that's brilliant. It makes me think, however, as well, about this idea that you talk about reactions and things, but it makes me think about, health professionals. Like, emergency doctors and ambulance drivers and paramedics, and also the people like the police and the military and the fire service and et cetera, et cetera. Those the sort of people that are in those emergency services, and how actually I think I'm right in saying is they don't talk about reactions, they talk about responses and response times, because they do so much training around so many different scenarios that it means they know what to do whenever things are presented with. And then when you end up with that one time in 1,000 or one time in 1,000,000, that is a real curveball. At least you probably practiced something kind of close to it, that you minimize that sort of knee-jerk reaction sort of time, and it becomes a considered response. And they kind of seem to do that because it saves lives, it protects their own lives, but also saves others' lives. And I think that sort of seems to be what you guys have done as well, is that because you've really, rather than just putting a plan together as a tick box exercise, but you've put a plan together and practice these scenarios and have the right sort of culture that fits around that and enables that actually the response muscles in your organizational kind of skeleton, as it were, are just seem probably way stronger than they would be if you hadn't done all that practice and scenarios.
No, I think that's right, and I think the other thing I'd add on top of that as well is just having communication tools.
Right.
Again, having the practice, so it isn't, to use your analogy, muscle memory. You're not having to overthink or stop to think you can act, but it's also having the tools, because again, businesses of all different sizes, even families of all different sizes, the ability to communicate and get information, especially nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of tools, and I think, using your example of healthcare and first responders and fire and police is, you can also practice have the muscle memory and be ready to react, but if you can't communicate, that can also cause issues. So I think it's also ensuring you have tools. I mean, it could be as simple as making sure every employee knows, you have a database or a list or access to mobile phone numbers, because, that's often the quickest thing you're going to do, whether it's text or call. And then you've got email, and we use some other instant messaging tools. But that was another thing that I think was very helpful for us, both internally as a company, but also with our customers, is just the transparency, but the ability to communicate very quickly. You literally in real time, it was amazing. I think for about a period of about 7 days, I felt like nCino went from not only being a bank operating system software company for financial institutions, but also a traffic management company, because we had live sort of online discussions from employees on different routes on how to get back to Wilmington, because there was literally every day a new route would open or another route would close. And so you're having to take 15 different roads plus to get to Wilmington, and there were just different routes. And so you could literally in real time see people saying, hey, this road is closed. Hey, you should go this way. And then people asking questions, has anyone been down this road? You also, obviously, right after the storm, we were very quickly able to confirm that every employee and their family was safe. And so I think that those communication tools, having those in place, and again, that are already used every day with your customers and your employees, become that much more powerful during an event like this, because you need to get that information very quickly. And I think when you do that, your company not only becomes able to, again, interact with your customers and each other, but take greater information and even help your community with that.
So, Jonathan, I've just been thinking about what you were saying, and I think I've just coined a question, and it's kind of inspired by nCino. And the question is this regarding a company's culture. And it's a question that people should be asking themselves is your culture hurricane fit?
I like it. I like that,
because
I like that, Adrian.
It implies a lot, I guess. It's almost like because it's not inspired, but it's coming out of your experiences. It shows that your culture is hurricane fit, right? Because you've been through it. This is not a scenario. This is not an exercise anymore. You've actually been through it, and you've come out the other side, and you're much stronger. So. That's the benchmark, I guess. Are you hurricane fit?
I can see the headline now, but yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way to frame all of what we've talked about. Is are you hurricane fit? And I think it's it's not a simple always yes or no answer, but it's a great way to start the conversation and really explore and evaluate, analyze whether you are, and if not, how can you be?
Exactly. So, Jonathan, is there anything else that we've missed out? So we've had a bit of an explore around, told a bit of a story about your recent experience, but is there anything else that you'd like to add that we've missed out before I ask you my final question?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to talk, Adrian. I mean, I think, again, obviously, what nCino is doing as a company in financial services and for banks is also an exciting topic that we touched on a few times. But I think, for us, it's just, anything that we can do to help, other companies to your great tagline now, be hurricane fit. How can others learn from what we experienced and were able to get through? And it wasn't perfect. I mean, there's a lot, there's things that we learn. That's the other part of this is,
sure.
You want to continuously improve. And so we've already had post hurricane fit meetings where we've said, okay, what are the things that we may do a little differently? And, there's always a few. I'm proud to say there wasn't a lot, but there were a few things we would have and will do a little differently. So I think that's the other thing too is, if you go through something like this, if you are hurricane fit, don't assume after you survive it and are successful, that you'll be successful in the next one. There's really, other things you can learn from each one. But yeah, I think that's probably the other way I'd sum it up. And obviously, we're full speed ahead with 600 plus employees and 200 plus customers now. We're continuing to grow our business and like to say we're growing from a calculated growth perspective, continuing to be successful. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Jonathan. So that brings me to my final question that I always ask at the end of these interviews. And the question is this: is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Yeah, no, I think what I'd like to shamelessly plug is, for all the listeners, any folks who work for financial institutions or all of us that interact with financial institutions, I'm sure all of us have had experiences with opening accounts or applying for mortgages. For folks who work maybe at financial institutions, some of the inefficiency you may deal with day in and day out with processes is, nCino, I think part of our success, not only with getting through our hurricane, but with our software is really to make people's banking experiences better. Mm-hmm. And to allow the bank to operate more effectively. I think there's a lot of, ironically, analogies and lessons from the hurricane that apply to financial institutions and customers who interact who sometimes can be frustrated with their financial institution because it's not transparent, or when they apply for a loan or mortgage, it takes months to get that approved. And on the flip side, bankers can be frustrated because they want to get those loans approved quicker and funded quicker, but the systems and the processes prevent them and the compliance from doing that. And so, the other big part of what nCino is doing is we have software that's really enabling banks to more effectively serve their customers and for customers to have a much better banking experience. So I guess that'd fall on our shameless plug, but for us, it's our powerful mission that we're truly on the mission. Or our goal is to transform the industry and make banking better for all of us. And so that's what I would also like to share, and appreciate the question.
Fantastic. Jonathan, I will make sure that I'll get all that edited up and written up so people will be able to read the highlights, but also kind of listen to the interview. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm really pleased that yourself and all the folks at nCino and the local community are all in good shape and getting back on your feet. But once again, yes, thanks for sharing your time today and your experience. I think that's been fantastic.
Thank you, Adrian. Really, really appreciated the opportunity and enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswimsco.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.